for this next session, we're going to expand it out a little bit and touch on the Southeast Asian players. More particularly, we're also going to touch on the ASEAN countries that are involved in terms of getting the startup ecosystem up and running or dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. So quite an interesting panel discussion, and it pretty much just takes us around the region this next session. We've invited Kuan from KK Fund based in Singapore. We also have Jamaludin BUJANG from Gobi Partners based in Malaysia, as well as NGUYEN from Do Ventures based in Vietnam. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. We are sort of remotely connected to Vietnam and Malaysia, and our Singapore representative right here in the Singapore studio with me. It's great to meet y'all. Thank you for taking the time. I suppose I'd like to start off by getting you to introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about the company you represent. Could we start off with you, Kuan?
Sure. Thank you for having me here. This is Kuan, founder of KK Fund. So we are a early stage VC fund based here in Singapore, and we invest into early stage startups throughout the region, including also in Taiwan and Hong Kong as well. But more recently, we have expanded our scope to start looking at Korean startups who are interested in coming over to Southeast Asia. And us being here in Singapore, very excited about that trend. We're seeing a lot of not just Korean startups, but also Korean conglomerates, as well as Korean government, all taking a very strong interest into Southeast Asia. So we're here to support that. Thank you.
All right. Let's head over to Malaysia. Jamaludin, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and Gobi Partners?
Hi, I'm Jamaludin BUJANG from Gobi Partners. I'm based in KL. Gobi, just a bit of background on Gobi. Gobi is a pan-Asian VC. They started off in China back in 2002. They came here in 2015, so we've been here for 5 years already. But since then, we have offices in other Southeast Asian countries. We have people on the ground in Singapore, in Manila, in Jakarta, in Vietnam as well. And we're trying to be very active in this space. That's what we bring. We are focusing on early stage as well as growth companies as well for this region. So we have country funds, and then we also have a regional fund as well to focus on growth companies. And by the way, thank you for inviting me to this event.
Thank you very much for taking the time. Okay, let's check in with Young from Do Ventures based in Vietnam. Tell us a bit about yourself and Do Ventures.
Hi, thank you for having me today. So my name is Dzung, and I'm currently the general partner of Do Ventures. So Do Ventures, we are a new fund. We just set up early this year, and we've focused on the early stage, mostly in Vietnam, from seed to Series B. So beside Vietnam startup, we are willing to consider to make the investment into the company who trying to expand their business into Vietnam.
All right. And Vietnam, of course, we will keep coming back to that because I think for the longest time we've seen Vietnam as an emerging economy, and they've really done well in spite of the COVID-19 situation, which is exactly what we are talking about today. COVID-19 and the ASEAN startup scene. So, like all around the world, the ASEAN region was hit hard by COVID-19. It's still struggling with it or trying to deal with it. We're trying to overcome all the negative results, the economic impact of this pandemic. We see once prosperous industries suffering, taking a bit of a setback as well. So we are going to talk about how the pandemic has changed the startup scene in this region in Southeast Asia. We've got about 35 minutes to get through this. Dzung, I really want to start with you, Dzung, because the Vietnamese startup scene, and I mentioned earlier on, we saw it as an upcoming economy, and it was thriving even with the whole US-China trade war. And then we had COVID-19. Vietnam did very well as well. How has the ecosystem changed for the startup scene in Vietnam in spite of COVID-19?
Yeah, well, so COVID, I think hit everyone all over the world for 2020, and then of course Vietnam is not an exception, right? But luckily, Vietnam government has been, handling the situation very well. And of course, we at the moment we only have 100 active case, and the life in Vietnam is back to normal. Already, you still, can travel domestically. You still, going out for the bar, entertainment, everything. And of course, the mostly hit industry was tourism industry. The tourism industry hit badly, and of course the airline, hotel, and though the startup in the interim industry was mostly affected by COVID. And in general, most of the startup company in the tourism business, they respond to the COVID-19 by cutting costs and trying to minimize their operation costs, so that they can maintain the longer runway. And of course, because the travel restriction, the overseas investor cannot come to Vietnam to meet in person and to discuss about the investment. So mostly they have to save themselves by minimize the cost and maintain the runway. And but the other sector like food delivery, e-commerce, edutech, and the enterprise solution for in the digital transformation, they are luckily in the situation, so they are still growing organically.
Yeah, I think we've all benefited from those ecosystems as well. All right, Jamaludin, your question gets a little bit interesting because you've got some history working in a government institution. You're now working for one of the most prominent venture capital firms in Malaysia. I'm very interested to get your view on the effects on the government side and the private side as well, because we saw how it took some time for the Prime Minister the Prime Minister of Malaysia to pass that budget bill, and here we are right now. The effects of the government response to the startup scene in Malaysia. What are you seeing on the ground, and what can you share with us?
Thank you. I echo the same thing as what Dzung was saying earlier. No countries were spared from all this. When we first noted about this COVID thing, it started off back China, if you can remember, right? It was in December and January and all that, and we took notice of that. But we thought that just like SARS, it's not gonna have that much impact. Or we can stop somewhere in between before you reach us, right? And I'm sure someone will come up with some smart solution to control the spread of the disease. And we had, Gobi had first-hand experience in dealing with SARS back in 2004, 2005 when they were in China. But we took note of the severity only like in January and February when we started to read news, and people just drop dead while they're walking on streets. And not long after that, then came March, and then suddenly things got haywire, and suddenly the spread was very fast, and it affects all countries. And then like in any of the countries in March, the government imposed on movement controls and all that. And we were caught off guard, to be very frank with you. I myself especially, we got caught off guard, and almost immediately we go back to our companies and check with them. So how are you guys doing? Are you prepared to prepare something like this? This is going to be one in a lifetime kind of event. And we look at all the numbers. We check with all these companies in terms of their financial strength and all that. And by mid-March, we got all the numbers in, and then we thought that, okay, is it like 2/3 or 3/4 of our companies has really good cash balance in their accounts, but we kind of worry about when slowing down the business. So they're going to hit on the revenue, and hence it's going to affect on the cost. So we took action, just like any other funds. Some companies tend to handle their cost management better. cutting down workforce and all that. So that's on the private side. The government, on the other hand, unfortunately for Malaysia at that time, there was, if you remember, that was in February, and the government just changed hands again. There was only like slightly almost, after 2 years of the election, well, almost 2 years after the previous election, and things was just a bit uncertain. So you got the political side, moving around in a loose manner, and then we got this coming. So it's a bit haywire, at that time. But the government did whatever their best to control the situation. A lot of some initiative was announced to make sure that the economy is not will not be affected much. And if you notice, the most recent budget, which is just now less than a month ago, that was the biggest budget in Malaysia's history. All were designed to make sure that the economy will survive, will be able to maintain the growth. In fact, the growth number they're looking, I don't know whether they're going to be achievable or not, is anywhere between 6 to 7% if the economy rebounds. Of course, it's subject to external economies as well, because Malaysia is a very export-oriented country. So that's on the economy side. Now, I think a lot has been talked about the impact of COVID and how it affects the companies, the people morale, the economy and all that. I think there's positive side of it as well. For one thing, I myself, I never order food before COVID. Now I'm good. I get used to that. I order food from Food Panda, Grab Food, and all that, and not just me, but also my family members as well. And I'm beginning to accept that this is a way to go, because when we work it out backwards, before that I would say, I don't need to order food. I can still go out and I have more choices right in front of me. Out of 30 menus, I can pick and choose which one. Now, I thought at the time it's like ridiculous if I just go and order food and get it delivered to me, right? Now it's like, hey, it's acceptable. So that's just on the consumer side. But I think on the company side as well, they realize that they cannot survive this this pandemic if you don't digitalize, right? And a lot of companies begin to digitalize, get access to to customers through mobile and all that. So so that's good, because that change is permanent. Once you go digitalize, you don't want to go back. So this is very good change. And even as things like when you go to restaurant now, and people the people who serve you food were wearing masks, right? That should have been done even before COVID, right? So which is good. And I hope that thing will continue. And then I think in general, I think we all realize that the world is also small, and everyone has a role to play to protect the environment. If I don't wear a mask, actually I'm hurting other people, right? I can spread the virus to other people, but not realizing that if other people don't wear a mask, I can get infected as well. So we're beginning to, I hope people will realize that, we all interconnected. We all have to look after one another, whether you know that person or not. It starts from yourself. That's probably I look at it. When you ask about whether the government and the private sector, they all work close together, because there's no way we all can survive without everyone's involvement in tackling this.
Yeah, certainly very, very true there. And I have a different kind of problem, Jamaludin. I order too much food. Okay, Kuan, I'm gonna turn the attention to you now. In Singapore, we have a saying: same, but different. So you see, everyone's kind of going through the same problems, us as well, but different in the sense that for a while there seemed to be hope. For a while there seemed to be, hey, maybe we'll get into phase 3, the fully reopen the economy, or travel bubbles that will come out. That did not happen. How much have you had to adapt and readapt and change and rechange? Tell us more.
Sure. So I think everything that was shared by the two gentlemen applies to us as well, and what we see. So, for example, from the startup side, we actually have to basically shift our focus a little bit from mainly looking at new investments into, okay, how do we focus a lot of our efforts into helping our existing portfolio companies to get through the COVID situation, especially since not many of the founders have gone through this type of situation before. They have not gone through, for example, the great financial crisis of 2008. Maybe they're still in school back then. Or if you're old enough like me, then you've gone through SARS and you're like, hey, this one is not a joke, no joke, seriously. So I can still remember very clearly my brother who is living in Shanghai visited me last December. And I was starting to read about these, this kind of mysterious coughs and flu-like symptoms people are having coming out of China. And my instinct, having gone through SARS, is, oh my gosh, something's going on. I don't know what it is, but something's going on. And of course, when I try to bring it up to my friends and people who I interact with here in the ecosystem and also outside of the whole tech ecosystem, they're like, you guys worry too much and so on and so forth. But it turned out that we were not worried enough. And even for myself, I have myself to blame. I was still planning my trips, flying all over the place, even for March and April. And this was back in December. I still booked the tickets and everything. So anyways, coming back to this, we have had to tell our portfolio companies, yes, focus on your cash burn, because I keep telling them you can control your expenses, but you cannot control your revenue. Right? That is out of your control. You can do your best, but that is out of your control. You can only tell me exactly how you'll spend your expenses, so plan for it wisely. So that's the first thing that we did. And then, of course, we have to help our portfolio companies take a look, right? Because pandemic, back then, yes, in March, April, no one really knew the extent of the problem. And fast forward to today, yes, people have more knowledge, but still, there's still debates as to whether or not, depending on the industry, this shift in consumer behavior, in patterns, Jamaludin didn't used to order food, now he orders food. You have new patterns and new behaviors that come out. And how do you really, prepare for that? Yeah. So we've had to spend a lot of time helping our portfolio companies do that. But in addition, we've had to adapt ourselves as a VC. And the reason I say that is because for KK Fund, we are an early stage investor. What does that mean? So usually it's pre-Series A. And this is, for those of us watching who may not be as familiar, these are basically startups that have not yet, let's say, had a proven out, let's say, product market fit. It's not yet proven. They're still trying to get that right and maybe on the path to scaling up. So still pretty early stage. And therefore, we have had to say pre-COVID, the only way that we can due diligence and make an investment decision is to meet like this, face to face, right? So then I get a sense of the founder, I get a sense of his or her team, I get a sense of the office culture if I visit. So pre-COVID, we were traveling on average almost every other week, sometimes every week. And meeting the founders face to face. And because of COVID, unfortunately for us based here in Singapore, no travel bubble, we cannot travel. We cannot travel to Malaysia. I cannot travel to Vietnam and see Dzung and all of the amazing startups over there in Vietnam. I can't meet them face to face. There's only so much we can do over Zoom, right? We don't get that human interaction. We don't get to read the founders, perhaps, right? Body language and the sense and kind of building the rapport. We can't do that. So we, as VCs, we have had to rethink how do we remain competitive how do we identify the right founders to invest in? And also, even for our portfolio companies, there's only so much that Zoom sessions will do, right? Like, how do we build more rapport and trust in this day and age where people still can't travel and we have to rely on, digital means?
Yeah.
So that's a big challenge for us, and I think for the whole industry to think about as well.
Yeah. A broad question for everyone, for the three of you gentlemen. In spite of the fact that we're facing these challenges, and you could try and compare it to SARS, no way, it's worse. It's scarier, but what's weird I find is, well, I'm not sure if weird is the right word to use, but I find there's still appetite for startups. This is for all three of you, perhaps respective to your region. Why do you think that appetite still exists? Kuan, let's start with you.
Sure. So I think this is part of what Jamaludin had mentioned as previously.
Okay.
Because of COVID, we've had to adapt to digital. We were forced in some instances, right? Companies are forced to experiment with working from home, right? Which usually never happened before, right?
Yeah.
Entire companies said to their staff, until next year, middle of next year, everyone is working from home. That has not happened in such a massive scale globally. So we're all learning on, how to adapt to this. And as I said, COVID just accelerated the path to digitization. So if you look at numbers, and I'll quote from the I think it's e-economy study that was done by Google and Temasek. They actually noted that for the first half of this year, the investments into startups in Southeast Asia has actually increased compared to the last second half of 2019. And so, I think it's a great time, actually. This may sound counterintuitive, but for startups and also VC investors.
Right.
Because it's during these times of pandemic that the businesses are actually forced to adapt and have to learn to cope. And almost by default, you're having to innovate, which is at the core essence of technology and startups ecosystem. So this is a great time because people are forced to experiment and forced to innovate. And for some of the investors, maybe they're thinking, hey, this may be a good time to invest into a startup with a perhaps lower valuation because there are more startups reaching out to investors for money.
Right.
But I think that again is a good time to see how resilient, how adaptable the founders are, startup founders, and I think that to me is the best indicator of whether or not you can invest into these startup founders. Okay. So this is an opportunity, I think.
Okay, turning crisis into opportunity. Kuan highlighting a lot of character traits that are necessary. Jamaludin, this one's for you as well. Same question. What's driving the appetite in Malaysia, in spite of the fact that it's a very noisy political environment, but it's a huge, huge market. What are you seeing?
Well, yeah, you're right. Like I mentioned earlier, there's so many things going on in Malaysia at the same time earlier this year. I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate, but we've come to a point where now, things are things are stabilized. I think people really want to focus on what's next, right? Okay, what's going to happen? It's on the government side, I think, like I said here, the budget was excellent. Was a brave step by the government to have a deficit funding this time, despite it was the financial government finances is not as good as before COVID, but it's a good thing because it instills confidence in the economy and the people. Now, I just want to mention a bit on what the government has done also since earlier this year. There are many things the government has also introduced. The government has provided relief funds for startup companies, of course, for any other business as well. But definitely in the startups, they've done that. That was channeled through the development banks. The reason why it's development banks is because the development banks is direct owned by the government, and also through venture debt fund. to provide funding for companies affected by COVID, especially startup companies. And that's just on the debt side. Also on the equity side, the government also is providing fund. A few months ago, they announced that they're gonna give out 150 million US worth of funds to eligible VCs, to invest in an accelerated manner for startups here in this country. And the private sector side, the banks especially, these are private banks I'm talking about, and they have allowed, to allow extension on loan repayments and interest, which helps a lot of small, SME business actually, and consumers. The government also provided tax benefit to property owners who reduce rental charges. Of course, it's only applicable for this year, only for this event. And recently, the Provident Fund also allowed depositors to withdraw some funds from their own account. This is the fund, by the way, for your own retirement. So it was a tough decision, but at least the government is willing enough to allow people to take out their money, some part of their money to help people to cope with this pandemic. So all in all, if you do all that with all the changes that Kuan has just mentioned earlier, things are reacting positively to this event. I want to stay positive. I think you've read some news that the vaccine is coming soon, and hopefully things will come back to normal within the next 1 year, 6 months to 1 year.
Yeah, that's definitely the optimistic picture, and we really hope it turns out that way. Dzung, time to turn our attention to Vietnam. Could I get your thoughts on what has kept the startup appetite on a high in Vietnam? What's driving that appetite? Could you share with us?
Yeah, so I think I have the same view with Kuan, because the way we consume, the way we work, and the way we meet person changing a lot. And then that is why for the digital economy, like in the food tech, in the edu tech, even in the med tech, though the startup have more opportunity to grow faster. And then like the way we meet people before, it's very hard for people. Normally in Vietnam, we meet in person and discuss, and we spend a lot of time together. But right now, you only meet in person for only deep, important, decision making. Normally, just work via Zoom, work from home. Even in Vietnam, we don't have social distancing, but people trying to keep distance between each other. So it also change the mindset of the leader, like the enterprise. We have more chance accelerate the digital transformation in the enterprise, like more enterprise solution. The market is more booming right now. And from though the change, at Do Venture, because we just set up our new fund early this year, so we have more chance to make the new investment, because the overseas investor, they couldn't come to Vietnam. And as Kuan mentioned, right, it's very hard for overseas investor to make an investment via Zoom. You cannot meet in person, and then it's very hard for you to feel the culture, to feel the founder passion. So we still make a new investment in different sector, like in the vertical e-commerce, in the enterprise solution. And right now we see, from my point of view, we see the pandemic, of course, is still a hard timing, but from our investment opportunity, we are very positive.
Okay, let's add on to what was just said, and Zung, I'll stick with you for this question, just to jump ahead so we have more time for another one. With regard to what the government has done in tackling the pandemic and what they're forecast to be doing next year, are you satisfied? Is there anything more you wish you could add to it, Zung?
So you mean in Vietnam?
Vietnam, yes.
Yeah, so in Vietnam, the government, let's say, if we say about Vietnam government action, just only one word, that is bravo. They have been handling the situation very well. And, very strict in Vietnam. They track everyone from, any case from community, they track. And we have very, you may be, a criminal if you don't protect yourself from COVID. And then if you don't wear mask, you get a fine like $150 in the public. So the government really strict on handling the situation. For the economy support, they have the policy, but for the detailed policy, the tax reduce and though the support for the cash flow for the company they're still doing, but the detail in the specific industry I don't know exactly because I spend more time on the startup scene now. And we expect next year when the vaccine are ready for everyone, the thing here is that the travel industry will bounce back because the tourism industry right now contribute about 10% of the total GDP of Vietnam. And even during the pandemic, Vietnam still a rare country, have the still growing in the GDP compared to the minus growth of the other countries. So we this year we about 2.6% of GDP growth. So if the vaccine are ready, I think the economy maybe have the much better growth compared to the current situation.
For sure, for sure. We'll talk a little bit about vaccines or no vaccines in just a sec. But Jamaludin, jumping to you, you spelled out Malaysia's plan for next year, economy-wise. Are you satisfied with what you've seen, and do you have a wish list that you wish you could add on?
Yes, I'm happy with what has been implemented by the government and the reaction and all that. But I really want to stay positive. I think everyone should stay positive because this is not the end of the world, right? We human, we always think positively as we move forward. But of course, when there's a lot of depressing news coming, hitting you again and again, you're kind of down. And but I think generally things you can expect things to get better. To be a bit more specific on the question earlier, with the what else can we expect? I think just specifically on the startup industry, I'm sure there will be a lot of pent up demand coming up, right? The moment the market start to recover. I think Mr. Dzung also mentioned, definitely travel will be among the first to rebound. They're gonna rebound very fast and very, in a huge manner. You can see that when China recovered, people among the first people do just go out and travel. So that's one thing. On startup, I think what's going to happen is, fundraising has basically dwindled down a lot during this period from the last 9 months, and will remain so for next few months. But once this thing clears, a lot of startups start to go back and start to raise funding. Of course, because they suffered as well. But to tap on this, the market rebound, they will start to go up and start to raise fund again. So I think the financial market and funding side will get busy again. We are preparing for that also now from our side. This will be the thing to expect as we go forward next 3 to 6 months.
Definitely, we see a lot of optimism or cautious optimism, depending on how you want to look at it. So, Kuan, here in Singapore, we have already seen some discussions in preparation for the budget to be released in February. But as someone that kind of looks at the startup landscape from a point of view, what are your hopes? Are you satisfied with everything so far? What do you wish more could be done?
To start off, I have to first say that I am just amazingly impressed, as a resident of Singapore at what the Singapore government has done, starting from the first reactions to COVID, to the phased approach, to then then also combining that with releasing a combined budget support of around 90 billion, if I'm not mistaken. To all facets of the Singapore economy, not just startups, but also SMEs and many of the GLCs and other Singapore corporates as well. So we see that, but in addition to just support to the domestic economy, what is also quite amazing for me, especially in the last, I would say last week, Singapore announced that they're hosting the World Economic Forum Davos next May. That is unheard of. They've never moved the event outside of Davos, and Singapore is the first place that they're thinking of hosting it. That's amazing. And I think earlier this week, they signed a UK FTA. So that's, again, another pretty amazing achievement. And I think just this morning, I saw that the STB has signed a 3-year contract with the producer of Korean drama to start filming Korean dramas in Singapore. So again, not only do the Singapore government figure out the comprehensive domestic approaches to fighting COVID, but at the same time, they're still looking out to how to expand, thinking for the long term. To answer your question, if there's anything else that I wish to see more of, again, not saying that they haven't done anything, but I think this is a great opportunity for education.
Right.
And what do I mean by that? We just talked about, amongst all of the panelists, we just talked about digitization. We just talked about people, being forced to have to experiment to learn how to order food online or, visit the doctor using your phone and do a lot of these things that one would never think about doing pre-COVID. So wouldn't this be a great opportunity to not just educate in terms of in schools, but also educate the PMETs, educate the SME owners, the folks working in the large corporates. What does it mean, and how should one prepare for the future in which digitization is becoming an increasingly important part of everyday lives? So I'll give you an example. For VCs like us, we talked about how people want to travel and how to have the relationship and connection. I think in many unscientifically verified studies, if you asked people what do they want to do most once the vaccine has been released, people say what? Travel.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
People want to travel again. People want to see their friends and family in faraway places. So that human connection, right? Like you gotta kind of figure that in. But on the flip side, guess what? Automation. Right? Because if you talk and survey, against unscientifically, a lot of the large corporates, especially in manufacturing or where labor is a big component of any business, many will probably tell you, hey, this is actually a good opportunity for us to explore automation. Whether it's with robots or with AI, solutions and so on and so forth, that will have a fundamental shift in the workforce of the future. And how should we all be prepared for that? I think that's an important point, perhaps for not just Singapore, but I think for all governments, to use this opportunity to help educate their population.
I really wish we had more time because we are running out of time. So very quickly, how does everything that you've discussed factor into your outlook for 2021? Very quickly, positive or negative? Quickly, why?
Okay. For me, very positive. We just said there's a lot of pent-up demand, and I think maybe I'm biased, but startups, one of the unfair advantage is that they can move fast and react fast.
True.
And so who else besides the startup founders who will be able to best take advantage of this situation coming into 2021 with the vaccine on the way? My bet is on startups.
Excellent. Okay, Dzung, from Vietnam, positive or negative? Quickly, why?
Positive. We see more chance because this is time for normally startup born in the bad situation, right? To solve the problem. And then right now we see a lot of problem, and then a lot of startup will be born soon, and that's our future.
Okay, Jamaludin, I know you are positive because only positive people wear really nice shirts like that. Tell us your thoughts.
It's Friday. It's Friday. Yeah, I'll stay positive. I think if this is one thing that we have to focus on: protect the environment. Look after another, even to animals. I hope people will do that. Now, I will end with two questions. Number one, is this work from home thing going to be permanent or not? It remain open. I have talked to both sides. There are good and bad points, but I think it's something we have to adjust as a company, even as an employee. The other thing is probably even more important is will there be another pandemic? I think this one is a bit negative. With global warming and all that, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen soon. This, again, is something new to us. Chances are it's not going to be a 100-year event anymore. It's probably going to shorten. So that's what worries me a bit.
Really important things for us to think about. I've been speaking this afternoon with Kuan from KK Fund, who's based in Singapore, Jamaludin BUJANG from Gobi Partners, based in Malaysia, as well as Dzung Nguyen from Do Ventures, based in Vietnam. Gentlemen, really appreciate your time today. Thank you very much. Take care and stay safe.